All right, so in this video, I'm going to be going over whether or not SMMA is still a viable business option in 2025 and beyond. Spoiler alert, I think it is. We're going to be looking at some Google Trends data that I think supports that. I'm going to be going over who SMMA is actually meant for in terms of the type of person, and also what sort of results you can expect from it. You know, everyone says you can make, 10K per month in 6 months. Is that true? Let's find out. So first of all, let's look at just a simple Google Trends chart. As you can see, SMMA in terms of popularity, at least when it comes to web searches, really sort of peaked at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, coincided with the rise of gurus like Iman Gadzhi and stuff like that. But importantly, since then, you can see it's massively dropped in popularity to 10% of what it was at its peak. Interestingly enough, if we switch from a web search to a YouTube search, which generally speaking is how people actually learn about, not just this business model, but new and interesting business models, you see that the growth and the interest was more or less sustained for, a good 18 months, I think it's fair to say. But again, since then, we're now at basically a third of the interest that it was. Now, why is this important and why am I showing you this? Well, essentially, SMMA, it's still a viable business option, but it's not the super shiny business model that everyone's starting at the moment. I'm not sure what exactly it is that the gurus are flogging these days, probably something to do with AI. But as you can see, not everyone is super interested in SMMA. It's still obviously got a lot of interest, but it's nowhere near what it was compared to its peak. And as such, not many people, at least compared to 18 months ago, are starting SMMAs. Why is this important? Well, quite simply put, you're going to have less competition when you start an SMMA, which is ultimately a good thing when it comes to you being successful. So now that that is out the way, let's actually look at who SMMA is actually meant for. So let's go through a pretty easy to understand example when it comes to starting a company. So let's say you or any other entrepreneur wants to start a high-level AI software company. I think it's definitely one of the most lucrative business models that you can probably start in the 2020s, but again, it's definitely one of the hardest, and I'm going to demonstrate why. So this blue arrow, and you can see it's pretty thick, is basically the amount of potential entrepreneurs that could start this business. You can see it's at 100% capacity at the moment, but sooner or later, when it comes to starting a high-level business model, there's going to be barriers to entry that basically prevent lots and lots and lots of entrepreneurs, people like me, for instance, from starting said business. For instance, you need a fairly high level of skills. If you're not already super proficient in AI, you're going to need to be super proficient in raising capital, in building a team, in managing a team, in being basically a project lead. There's so many skills you need to be successful in basically starting an AI software, even if you yourself aren't the person coding the AI, right? So that obviously narrows it down a fair bit. Next, you're going to need a super high level of capital. Most AI softwares aren't profitable full stop, let alone in their first 5 years. As such, you're going to need a lot of capital to sustain that run rate. That obviously narrows it down even more. And again, obviously helps. It's not, I'd say, super required, but it definitely helps to have established connections when it comes to starting a business model like this. Again, if you don't have an insane amount of level of capital, you're probably going to be looking for outside investment. You're going to be looking at basically people to partner with and to basically push that service. And again, that narrows it down so much to an extent that you now have a tiny little blue arrow compared to the big one we started with. And even still, you've got a low chance of success. AI business models are super potentially lucrative because of their basically industry value multiplier. But even still, they aren't basically, even with all these things, even with a high level of skills, high level of capital, established connections, your chances of success aren't that high. Now, why am I telling you this and what does this relate to SMMA? Well, let me show you. Same exact sample, start with that blue 100% arrow. Generally speaking, SMMA, you don't need a high level of skills. You can basically not even have ran a service before, and you can still break into SMMA, learn the skills basically on the job, and be successful with that. Now, what does that mean? That's a low barrier to entry, so it doesn't really eliminate anyone. Again, you don't need high levels of capital to start an SMMA. In fact, I'd argue you probably need no capital to start an SMMA. Literally, when you're selling a service that you yourself are running, you don't need any money to basically start that service and start that business. So again, that doesn't really narrow it down at all. You don't need any connections for obvious reasons. I mean, it helps obviously, but you don't need them to start that business model. But even still, with all those factors in mind, you still have a low chance of success. And why is that? Essentially, how does that compare to the previous model I showed you? Well, as you can see, with a business model that has such low barriers to entry, like an SMMA, you're going to have a lot of low-level competition. And that is essentially if you're, for instance, got a really amazing service and a really amazing product, if you're reaching out to businesses through, for instance, cold email, they have probably a dozen other cold emails that they receive daily from people that have absolutely no idea what they're doing, right? Now, that being said, you can absolutely still succeed in SMMA, but it's also important to basically have accurate expectations when you get into a business model like this. If you've got no skills, no existing capital, no existing connections, chances are you're not going to make 10K per month in 6 months. I mean, you're probably not even going to make half of that in 12 months. I know, speaking from experience, when I started my SMMA, I had no skills, no capital, no connections, nothing, and I didn't make 5K per month for probably 18 months in all honesty. Now, you might be thinking, well, hang on, I've either been through courses of other gurus, or I've seen, testimonials from other gurus, and they say that, this person hit, 10K per month in 6 months, or such and such months. And the reason that happens, I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's for a very specific reason. Generally speaking, when that sort of growth happens, when they experience that insane growth in results, it's because, one, they've got a very proficient set of skills. They might already, for instance, be proficient at marketing. They might have already, have some experience in that field. And as such, they probably already have a very fleshed out service compared to, even I can say from experience, when I was starting with my marketing agency, the first few clients that I had, I did not get very good results for, full stop. And again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because you're building that skill and you're building that service as you go along. That's why SMMA is such a great business model, because it allows you to build great skills. Again, those people, on top of having great skills, they probably already have a pretty high level of capital to invest in themselves and basically learn their tactics and the strategies and the skills. Again, that's why you commonly see these testimonials from courses, right? They have to buy that course to be a testimonial from it. And again, connections, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a ton of connections, but what they probably have are certain personality traits that make them suited to an SMMA. They might be super outgoing, super confident, and as such, when it comes to something like picking up the phone and doing cold calls, they're going to be super proficient at that. Now, what is the basically takeaway from all this? I certainly don't want to discourage anyone from starting an SMMA, but at the same time, you need to be honest and realistic with yourself that, say, 10K per month is the goal. Most people don't hit 10K per month in their entire career. I mean, I think the average salary in the US is something like 65,000. What's that? Like $5,500 a year, a month rather. So if you're literally trying to make double the average salary with no skills, no existing capital, no, industry connections, people that can basically coach you and give you their strategies and their solutions, then it's not that you have a low chance of success, but you just need to temper your expectations and say, look, I'm probably not going to be an overnight success. And that's absolutely fine. At the end of the day, most people to achieve, 10K per month or six figures end up going through years of university, years of climbing the corporate ladder. And when you add it all up, it probably takes them 10 or so years from leaving high school. With an SMMA, you absolutely can get to 10K per month a hell of a lot quicker than 10 years, but it's not going to be 6 months. So with that all said, if you wanted my help starting or growing your own digital online business, first link in the description, check out the video, I highly recommend it. But other than that, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.